Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 452, 453, and 454. To the Navy headquarters, off to rescue Ace, and then the Friends' whereabouts. The Weatheria report, and the cyborg animals, and the Friends' whereabouts, the chick of a giant bird, and a pink showdown. In these episodes, Buggy has more of a reputation than he expected, and he doesn't embrace that as quickly as I thought he would. And then we get to see what's going on with everybody who has been scattered to the winds. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. I appreciate all of you, especially Florian, for bearing with me when I was supposed to have watched one of these episodes for the last one, when I did the wannabe with Florian, and I just misread or just fucked up. I don't know what I did, but I didn't watch it. And it actually turns out to be a kind of a... If I'm going to mess up, this week worked out well, because I think a lot of what I would have focused on would have been pretty quick to talk about. So it's going to be easy, I think, to fit this one in. So 452 to the Navy headquarters. This is unexpectedly a plot line where Buggy thinks that he has been overestimated but is not upset about it. He starts off protesting, though, and that's the part that I found really surprising. I'm going to get to exactly how this falls out, but that was the first thing I really wanted to mention, because all Buggy does is attempt to bolster his own street cred, and he really likes being seen as this, badass. And I think it's supposed to be that he realizes that the Navy is going to be after him in a particular way, the Marines, due to their mistaken belief of him being a real ringleader in this. I want to say, though, the fact that people are saying, I don't know why they're zeroing in on him and not the warlords. I do. He's the one that's been... he was one of the first escapees. Yeah. To me, this is not a mistake. The fact that they focus so much on Buggy, the only thing that's puzzling is why they don't also focus on Mr. 3 the same way. Because he was amongst the first crew, the original group that escaped, who then led to all of the others escaping. But I really feel like Mr. 3 is as much one of the main players as Buggy is. And I think the only reason that he isn't treated the same way is because of Buggy's history with Goldie Roger. So anyway, I'm going to back up to the beginning of this episode, because we are coming right off the tail end of Mr. 2 sacrificing himself, Bung Clay, to ensure that all of our friends were able to get out of here and open the doors to it. I really, you guys, I don't know what I want to happen with that. I just have to sort of revisit it briefly. I do not believe for a moment that he is going to be executed, although he does look to be in dire peril. But I don't know how we meet up with him again without turning around and going back to Impel Down. And I don't want to do that. I want to rescue Bon Clay. I don't want to go back to this location again, though. Do you get what I mean? This location is done. It's over. It's a wrap. I want, if we are going to rescue him, to be given a new place to do it in. The only way that I can see that happening is if the Marines decide that this mass breakout renders Impel Down basically null and void as a prison, which would make sense. I mean, there's essentially nobody left in the place. So maybe if they decided that they were just going to hold him somewhere, it would turn out to be a completely different location. And that's where we could rescue him from. I genuinely do not know. Like, what I was going to say is I don't know why they'd keep him alive, because one would think they would assuredly kill him. But that's, like, the conceit of this world is that people don't die. So, you know, it's fine. They just wouldn't kill him because that's not what they do in this universe. So that is still fresh in everybody's mind. And when we start this episode, we are inside the prison again, and we have all of these different, like, I don't remember. I wish somebody was in the chat, you guys, because I'm so sorry. I lose track of which ones are the warlords and which ones have a different title that I'm already forgetting. Shiryu is the one who's speaking here, and he is in the level 4 heat hell. And he's saying, like, basically, the fact that you guys are here, but you're underestimating everything, like the way that this has all gone down. And he's talking to the one on the horseback who looks old, and then the mime dude, Burgess, which is the name of the one that looks like a strong man. I like the conversation that is happening here. I am confused about what it is that they're all agreeing to. And I'm feeling like maybe it's partially the delay between watching episodes that doesn't usually happen. And that's why I'm forgetting some of, like, how these things link together. Because I just watched these episodes like an hour ago. So it's not like I've forgotten since the last time. But it's been about 3 weeks since the recording of the episode with Florian, I think. And Shiryu is the name of the guy who was released from the jail, who had been the warden until it turned out that he was just going too far for everybody. And he says that he doesn't see a future for himself. And that this Blackbeard is, like, the exact type of person he was hoping to meet. So he's going to, like, apparently throw in with Blackbeard. But I do not see it. Because Blackbeard doesn't appear to be a cruel person. And he's, you know, self-interested. He wants what he wants. But that's different than being, like, a sadist, which is what Shiryu is. And I don't know if Blackbeard is aware of that. Like, what kind of dude it is that he's talking to right now, you know? But regardless, we cut away from there and we go to the ship that everybody has escaped on that contains Buggy and Crocodile and Luffy and, who's the other one? Oh, Mr. Zero or Mr. One. I remember that his name is something silly and I already forgot it. But Buggy is celebrating, and the thing that we, like, there's a conflict that pops up between him and Luffy because what he wants to do is just party and drink. And Luffy is still very caught up in his feelings about Bon Clay and feels like this guy should be honored for the sacrifice that he made and what he did for his friends. And essentially, I mean, what it comes down to is that Buggy is a selfish person who does not care what anybody sacrifices for him. Unless it is a person that meant a lot to him, which nobody really does, then he isn't going to care. So he tries to be like, oh, well, we can, you know, don't live in grief he would have wanted us to be happy and to party. Let's make this a combo funeral, which Luffy rightfully is like, dude, you don't even know if he's really dead. So I don't appreciate you being like, yeah, let's just treat it like for sure this guy has been executed already. But also, whenever anybody's like, you can't just live your life in grief when a person has literally just died, that's the wrong time to say this shit. Get the fuck out of my face with it. Meanwhile, Iva is talking about Inazuma, who is the person with the orange and white hair. And basically he's saying that Inazuma is really, really injured. And that they're going to require a lot of recovery time. And any kind of like speeding up of it will really fuck them up. So just good old-fashioned bed rest and natural rehabilitation is what's best for him. Meanwhile, Iva has taken years off of his own life by using the hormones that he did to get himself healed from the poison. And Iva is like, I'm just really glad that Magellan only used one type of poison on me. Because if it had been more than that, I don't know that I could have recovered at all. But yeah, so Inazuma is out for the count. A bit of a shame, because I feel like I only just barely got to see what it was he was capable of before he was erased from the board, you know? So then we have an interesting conversation that I wasn't sure what to make of. Crocodile is talking to, what is his name? The Fishman. And he is saying, like, how surprised he is that this dude was able to muster all of these sharks to help them out. And he's like, I didn't really think that fishmen were able to like, talk to fish that way. And this dude is like, are they not? I just thought that was how it was. And Crocodile, initially what he said was like, I hadn't thought you could do that, but apparently I was wrong. And then when the Fishman says, I thought we could all do that, Crocodile just says, what do you know, a misfit amongst the savages. Which, first of all, don't appreciate you calling the Fishmen savages, Crocodile. After the shit you have done to people, you have no right. Secondly, how do you know he's a misfit? I mean, just because you didn't know about it, and now all of a sudden you're assigning, like, a label to him amongst his own people, I'm just going to need you to entirely back off. Okay, Crocodile? You don't know what you're talking about. You're being kind of offensive. Just keep your thoughts to yourself and observe without comment. Can you just do that? That would be great. But yeah, I just, you know, he says something about like, well, we do have a violent nature. And I'm like, no more violent than fucking everybody else in this universe. So Jinbei, that's his name. God, it gets so frustrating trying to remember these names, you guys. So he says, I owe you a great debt, Luffy, because you've given me a chance to rescue Ace. And Luffy's like, well, I'm just glad to have you on the team because you're really fucking badass, dude. So you don't owe me anything. And he says, I apologize for my involvement in that unfortunate situation, and is referring to Arlong. We see him pop up for a second. I don't remember Jinbei being part of that. And I don't know if you mentioned that last time we recorded, Florian, and I just forgot, but genuinely don't remember. So if anybody wants to refresh me, or maybe he was just sort of off to the side during things, but not a big player. But yeah. And he says, I may be one of the 7 warlords, but they'll strip me of my title after this. And Luffy and Buggy are in the middle of like fighting and arguing with each other when they both stop and they're like, wait, a warlord? What are you talking about? And why did you say we're heading to Navy headquarters? Now, what it turns out is happening here with Whitebeard and this whole war that's going on, evidently none of these prisoners were aware of. All of the ones who were following Iva knew, but the prisoners who were with Buggy, basically everybody who's dressed like they are in Rocky Horror knew what the deal was. And everybody who is in black and white stripes didn't. That's kind of where we're at. And Buggy, understandably, is just like, we escaped Impel Down, and now you just want to basically put us in the next best place that they control. That is not the deal. We're not just going to walk back into jail. What the hell? I love these other guys saying it's not our fault you're so dense. We passed through the gates of justice. Like, you had to know the way that this current works. And we hear about the tub current, restricted to government passage only. I don't recall this. Did we know about the tub current? It may have simply not been called by this name, but, was animated. But evidently, the way that they left means that there's only one place that they can head. And I find that really funny. I don't know why this got me cackling so bad, you guys, but the whole idea of just like, well, once you go out these certain gates this certain way, there's absolutely no option but to head straight for Navy headquarters. It's a combination of how ludicrous that idea is, and that there's just like a current that only the Marines use. And also the fact that something as basic as that is apparently not common knowledge. So, yeah, Buggy, didn't know. And it feels like a pretty, I don't know, maybe it's protected information, but Crocodile knows. So I'm just going to go with the fact that he's right calling Buggy dumb. It's one giant whirlpool that connects the government's 3 major facilities. The reason we busted out now is because we have a role to play in this war, so you better get used to it. And Buggy and Mr. 3 are just like, I cannot believe this. Like, we thought we were done. Luffy says something about how the real fight is about to start. And everyone is like, real fight? What do you call what happened back there? And I love this. They tell him to turn the ship around. Jinbei's like, literally can't do that. The current do what it do. Like, that's it. And then Luffy says, well, if you want to get off, then just jump off the boat. And they're like, hey, bro, reminder that we ate devil fruit, so we'll fucking drown? No, we can't do that. And everybody else on board is just remembering all of the, baddies that they could potentially go up against, all of the other warlords. And it's quite a, what's the word I want? Roster, I guess, is probably it. And again, I'd rather be in prison than in this war. I understand fully that the role of these prisoners is to be the whiny ones, right? Every step of the way in Impel Down, they have been excited to break out, but then they reach the even slightest obstacle and immediately begin to panic and just be like, I hate this. I don't want to be here anymore. And I honestly find them very tiresome. I really do. Guys, get a hold of yourselves, for the love of God. Y'all are so whiny and so just tiresome. That's the only word I can come up with for this. I don't want to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. Okay? So just fucking keep it to yourselves. The moment that they hear, well, we're going back to Navy headquarters, I'm like, all y'all were saying before was how you'd rather be dead than tortured the way that you were being tortured. So, which is it? Just asking. What do you want? Do you want to be tortured forever? Is that preferable? Really stop and think about that, what you're saying. Because it feels to me untrue. But what do I know? And I love that there's like one girl who's like, all of us from New Kama knew about this already. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us? I'm like, because they were fucking busy. Okay? They were all busy. One of them literally yells, mommy. This is when they begin hearing the ringing of a transponder snail, which you guys takes way too long for them to notice and then to answer. It takes so long. Luffy answers it. And he tells them that it's him, which I really did enjoy because the whole crew is like, you shouldn't tell them that it's you. And I really was sort of like, guys, that ship has sailed. Literally and figuratively. Do you think that they don't know he has the ship? Do you think that, like, you could just not say? What do you think they think happened? Of course they're aware. Come on. And yeah, this guy is saying, we received a report from Impel Down, so let's be honest here. Before contact was lost, we had insider information being fed to us. Based on this, we've determined who the two ringleaders behind the breakout are. You, the pirate known as Straw Hat Luffy, and another notorious pirate, Buggy the Clown. And again, Buggy protests against this, but I really think that they're right. I don't know. I just do. So finally, this guy says, pass me the documents. At first, we just assumed the clown was another 2-bit criminal, but to be frank, we were wrong. We learned he was a crew member on the ship of Gold Roger, King of the Pirates. And everybody on Luffy's end of things begins to freak out and is blown away that that's who Buggy kept company with. You're a star among pirates. And then the Marine says, and there's one more thing. He's an ally of one of the 4 emperors. His name is Red-Haired Shanks. So if you can hear us, Buggy, we don't know how someone with your background has laid low for so long, but you've most certainly stepped into the spotlight now. And again, Buggy protests this, like, notoriety. Because they're saying that he has a connection with Fire Fist Ace, but we're sure you share the same goal with Straw Hat Luffy to rescue him from execution. And Buggy is saying, not really, but it's too late now. Like, you are involved in this, sir. Your fingerprints are all over it, metaphorically speaking. So I know that you sort of hoped that you'd be able to just ditch these dudes. And I'm not, like, blaming you even for wanting to do that, because you didn't ask to be part of a war. You just wanted to escape from jail. And I don't hold it against you that you weren't looking for a big, bad conflict to get involved in. But you know what? There's a price to be paid for everything. And let me explain your future. Your fates depend on whether we open the gate of justice. As long as we leave it closed, you can't get to Marineford or get out of the tub current. You will be completely stranded. There is no sea for you to escape to. Better get used to your surroundings. That's all. And I love Luffy just says, wait, Navy, I'm going to rescue Ace no matter what. Better keep your potatoes peeled. I loved this because one of the Navy guys on the other end who's listening to this exchange with, like, his captain or whoever it is, just looks at the captain and says, "Or what?" And eventually somebody says, "Dude, you mean keep your eyes peeled?" And I can't tell you all how much I appreciated that clarification, because I didn't know what the fuck it was he was trying to say. Truly no idea. I was like, potatoes peeled? Hold up. I was lost. So, yeah, I just really found that funny. And the fact that everybody around him is just like, dude, what do you even mean? I also have this question. So yeah, they hang up at this point, and Luffy is just standing there fucking pissy, as usual, hyper-focused the way that he is. And I love one of the women saying, you guys are so obsessed that he said potatoes peeled. He just picked a fight with the Marines. Can we focus on the big, more important thing? So now comes the point where Buggy is just like, guys, no, I'm not as important as you think. And I love the like way that everybody responds to this. Jinbei is just like, well, this is a surprise. Mr. One is like, why is he so weak then? Crocodile just goes, And Mr. Three says, that pedigree? And he's so petty? Iva says, every ship has one. A little blemish, I mean. And I love all of Iva's people just nodding, because it seems like that's all of them being like, I mean, I don't really care what his deal is that's supposed to be so impressive. I'm not impressed. And I really like the fact that they are all so unimpressed. Like, everybody can smell a rat, right? Everybody feels like this doesn't exactly jibe with what I have been seeing from this dude. But there's no point in trying to overthink it. We may as well just sit back and let it do what it do and see if anything shows up that makes it clear why he has the reputation that he does. We know, yeah, he was on that ship, but it doesn't seem like that means to... It, like, in reality, means what they think it means in the Marines to have been on Goldie Roger's crew. Goldie Roger seems like he was just sort of like Luffy in that he welcomed whoever, and he inspired loyalty in people for sure, to a degree, but Buggy is a real outlier in that he never feels loyalty to anybody but himself. He is such a self-serving type that I think they are imagining him having been more of a devotee and like having gotten more power up somehow from Roger than he actually did. So I don't know. I really like, obviously we know enough about Muggy. He does do the monkey balls, though. We haven't seen those in a while. We do know enough about him and the way he functions that I don't personally expect anything surprising from him. I think what we have seen is what we're getting. But I wouldn't mind it if he started to like kind of fall backward into this role that he is pretending to already occupy and just began to really like go off and do things in either a daring way or accidentally make things look more impressive than they are. Because that is the thing that I always find really fun, like the trope of somebody who gets credit for stuff that they didn't do on purpose. With the big exception of Inspector Gadget, in which he got all of the credit for things that Penny actually made happen, because I was very irritated by that. So, yeah, anyway, I just really am curious about how this is going to go. And like I said, I was surprised at how much he resisted the reputation that he was being offered at first. Because it does seem like his ego is the exact type that would be really gratified to be seen in this light. And even if it's like, well, the Navy is giving me more credit than I deserve and they are putting their crosshairs on me, I can't even understand shying away from it in that context. Because you just escaped Impel Down. It's the first mass escape from that place that has ever happened, I got news for you, bro. Their eyes are on you already. It's too late. Like, you're not getting out of this. What do you mean? You know? So I just feel like that's pretty much a foregone conclusion, and that it's silly to even try and like hide from their sight at this point, because you're a wanted fugitive who has done something historically that has never happened before. So anyway, let's move on to the end of this episode, because I'm getting hung up on this, these moments here. But suffice to say, Buggy eventually begins leaning into this and being like, well, you know what? Maybe if they believe in me, I'll be able to pull off like ruling the world eventually. And we can handle Whitebeard even, and just completely like take over. And he's standing up there with like the sun glowing behind him, and everybody starts kneeling and praising him as if he's a god. And it's so wild. They're crying and talking about how he has allowed them to dream again, and that they don't even want a peaceful life. All they want is to believe in dreams and pursue them and take risks. And I was just like, I suppose, okay. I'm not really entirely, I do not understand worshiping a person most of the time. But when I fail to really comprehend why people are acting a certain way, I sort of stop and think about Beyonce. And like, I know that she's just an actual person, and I don't actually worship her in a sense of like, I worship a person, but she embodies in a concept the kind of creator who is so like curated and so in control of their image, that the level of respect that I have for her is bonkers and off the chart, like in comparison to any person that I have met, because I don't know her. That's part of why this works, is because she's a distant figure who can simply skirt around the sorts of flaws that you see and unearth once you get to know somebody better. So I'm just going to try and keep in mind that maybe these guys are reacting this way, and that I would react this way if it were Beyonce, or at the very least, like, try and put it in that context. That'll work. All right. So that's pretty much the end of that episode. And now we start like, checking in with everybody else. And I was a little bit surprised in some of these cases how little forward progress we really make. Oh, I forgot that we're still with Luffy at the beginning of the next episode, but only briefly. It's not really, we're only checking in with him for the first like 2 or 3 minutes before we cut over. But I think what happens with Nami and arguably with oh my god, guys, I keep wanting to say Elvis because that's what I am thinking of. Oh my god, what is his name? I'm dying. But I think they have the most forward movement, Sanji notwithstanding. Chopper, though, I don't know what's happening with Chopper. He's got no forward movement, it doesn't feel like. I thought it was going to be a thing, and the show clearly knew what I expected and just decided to, like, make a joke out of it, which I really do respect and like. But the result of that means that there's not really any progress made on that. But we'll get there in a second. So for right now, we are with Nami, and she's on this like weird weather island. And it turns out that he is actually connected to the ground, but she doesn't know that yet. It's not until a little bit later. And it's clear that she isn't really sure what she should like be focusing on or doing. She's trying to... She's still got a huge attitude with this guy who is only a sweet little bumbling wizard, basically. And I really want Nami to stop taking out her anger on everybody else. She is so unable to control her emotions. I hate being like, this bitch is too hysterical, but she kind of is a little bit sometimes. And he comes over, and he's got a cloud that is made to taste like cotton candy on a string that he's like bringing over as if it were a balloon. And it sort of gets stuck on her face and apparently was suffocating her. Although the fact that it's a cloud, I would think would mean there's plenty of oxygen in there for her to inhale. But, she finally stops and is like, oh, it does taste like cotton candy. That's crazy. She beats this guy in the face before being like, oh, it's good. And then taking it, and he just like gives this huge sigh of relief. And I'm just like, this poor little abused wizard. Oh my God. So he says, you know, I can grant you a favor. You want to go to Sabaody? We can. And she says, well, when do we get there? And he says, what do you mean? Like, with area just travels on winds, so if a typhoon hits, we might get there pretty fast, but otherwise... And she says, well then, how far did we travel yesterday? And he says, about 600 feet or so. She beats him again. Honestly, this time I can kind of see it. It's not the best way to handle it, but also. And his whole vibe is, I mean, you could just stay here and get there, like, eventually. And then offers to bring her down. I could stock up on some funding. And she says, go down where? And he says, to the ground. And she's like, wait, you can do that? And I find it hilarious that she never even asked if she could get down from here. She asked if he could bring her there, but not if she could get off the floating island, which would be my first question. So the fact that this never even came up, I assumed that she had asked already, because why would that not be immediately what you're asking about? But evidently no. So they are on, like, they go to, and it's not like the ground fully. They're still on this bubble, I want to say, but it's more ground than where they had been. And there are ships there that they can take that fly. They're really, really cool looking, honestly. I'm very into all of the bubble imagery that we've got going on in this arc. And the bubbles fill with fire in the manner of like a hot air balloon. So that is the way. It's almost like they're in a balloon, a weather balloon, I guess would make sense. It is pretty cool looking. And they are able to pass through the bubble that forms the sort of like protective barrier of this land. And I just think that this is really neat. I really like the look of this. And it turns out that what he does is he tries and helps various peoples with the difficulties they're having in weather. So they wind up landing in this area where there is a terrible drought. And I do enjoy this aspect of it. This old man is like, hey guys, I could help you and make it rain, LOL, for 100 million berries and just wildly overestimates what it is these people can afford. And then when Nami points out, that's a lot, dude. Do you think they look like they've got that kind of money laying around? He's like, well, then what about 100 berries, which is like what you would pay for like a pack of gum. And I love the fact that he asks for way too much, and it seemed like it was just pure greed. But it seems like what it is that this man has absolutely no concept of how money works. So the fact that Nami is the one with him, and he's over here talking about like getting funding for his research, it's no wonder you haven't got any funding, sir. You don't know how money happens. So she's the perfect person, you know, she'll be able to do his accounting and handle the negotiations and be reasonable about how much he's charging. And he begins to generate all of these clouds and then hands her one of those ropes that she like unties the knots in order to bring the wind up, which I had forgotten about this whole thing. I like that. I don't remember if I mentioned this before, but like they, in nautical terms, the traveling speed is knots, right? It's going about 20 knots, Captain, you know. So the fact that she uses knots, actual physical ones, to create the wind is very, very fun to me. I like it. And yeah, all of a sudden, the bubbles holding these rain clouds explode. The clouds expand really quickly and suddenly, and it just begins to pour rain. And she's just sort of like blown away at what he was able to accomplish and how meaningful this is to these people. Like, this is a huge help. And he doesn't, like, I think that as much as Nami can just be somebody who's after treasure and that's all she cares about, she does care about people too. But that's not as fun, you know? So I like her getting involved in this, and she asks if she can, like, learn from him. And he says, absolutely. Anybody who wants to learn about the weather and who's passionate about it, I'm down. And this is when we cut to, what is the name of this? I can't remember it. It's the island where all of the like engineers and mechanics come from, though. And this is the story with Frankie. God, I can't believe I forgot his name. I'm so sorry, Frankie. So, reminder, Frankie has been turned from a goofy Gus into a refined Englishman. It's very weird because he's still in his like little skivvies, but he's got that like evening jacket and bow tie with it. And because he's only functioning on tea and not with soda, and they don't have any soda, it's like going to take a while for it to arrive. He isn't going to return to his old self. And I love this little kid just being like, dude used to be fun. I really hate this version of him. This sucks. So he goes and visits Frankie in the middle of the night, and it's just staring at him in a real creepy way at one point. And he's looking at him and has opened his door. And then it cuts to Frankie in the woods, and he's just on his bed in the woods. I was so baffled. I was like, is he trying to kill him? Like, what exactly is it that he's attempting to do? At this point, Frankie gets up and is like, oh, nice. There's a scarf. And he grabs it, and it's a snake. And it's not just a snake, like a regular snake. It's a snake that has been altered mechanically and given like a laser that fits inside its mouth. So it basically opens its mouth and like sprays him with a laser. I hesitate to say sprays, but it feels less like a targeted like small beam and more like an explode. It's almost like it breathed fire on him, but it's too controlled really for that. So Frankie is standing out here, and then he like is walking back towards the facility, and he comes across a sign that says keep out mechanical animals. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then this little kid whose name is Torimo, I don't remember, but he opens this like trap door and is watching all the proceedings, apparently under the impression that if Frankie fights all of these like wild animals, he will just become his normal self again. Unclear why he thinks that's what's going to happen. I don't really get the you know, like it's like, what it makes me think of are those old sitcoms in like the late 80s, early 90s, where somebody got hit on the head and began acting differently, and then the only solution ever was to hit them on the head again and get them back to their old self. That's what I'm thinking here, is like just sort of a shock. But it becomes really clear very quickly that this new version of Frankie does not know how to fight. He is getting the shit kicked out of him. And he's asking the animals if they are cranky because they forgot to eat breakfast. Like, trying this whole thing. When the little kid yells help, Frankie does interpose himself between the child and the gorilla, the altered sort of gorilla. But even though he does this, he still has like the bravery he always had. He doesn't seem to have the desire to fight. It's not even that he doesn't have the skills anymore. He's trying to like reason with this animal that's beating the shit out of him and be like, hey, you know, we don't have to do things this way. And I just was like, don't we though? I don't know, bruh. It seems like we may have to do things this way. I get why you would like to sidestep it, but he just keeps talking about how like violence isn't necessarily the answer. And I'm like, but sometimes it is, though. And as this like beatdown continues, this is so strange, you guys. The tea that is inside Frankie's like stomach compartment gets bubbles in it. Now, it seems like what he says later is basically, I finally like worked up a head of steam or something like that. I've run out of steam, literally. And I couldn't understand, like, I guess it's supposed to be that his anger is causing it to turn to steam. Because at first what I thought was that it was becoming carbonated somehow. And that the way that was happening was that all of the tumult of him getting like beaten and stuff was what was allowing that to happen. Like, he was being banged back and forth and it was causing all these bubbles that it became carbonation, which doesn't really physically make sense. But it also doesn't physically make sense that he becomes so angry that the tea just starts to boil. It doesn't matter. Either way, in the midst of this fight, his eyes suddenly turn bright red, which is real creepy looking. I did not care for that. And he starts shooting steam out of his nose and mouth and ears, and his hair spontaneously jumps back up into a not exactly a mohawk, I guess you could call it a faux hawk, and his jacket shreds from the like arm, from the shoulders down, so he's once again in a short-sleeved outfit. He looks mostly back to his own self, but it turns out that he is not fully back to himself. Because he is out of steam, he is going to turn into the upright citizen tea drinker until he gets more steam. And this kid is like really, he's like, Vegapunk, we'll be able to like find a way to give you a soda machine. This guy is the genius that cooked up a whole ton of the stuff on this island, like those animals that you just fought. I heard he was kind of an oddball, and he did leave the island overrun with dangerous cyborgs, but that doesn't make him any less of a genius. And I just have to say, yes, it does. Yes, it does. So apparently this place is like boarded up, and this kid is like, I was told not to come in here unless, like, he doesn't even say unless for an emergency. He says just straight up, I wasn't allowed in here, but this is an emergency, so you're going to have to protect me. The moment that they step foot in here, all of these different alarms begin to go off, and all of these lights turn on, things come whirring to life. And they turn and look at something that we don't actually see. And Frankie just says, well, this isn't good. So that's the end of that episode. Let's go to Sanji. You guys, Sanji and Choppers, I've only got like 7 minutes left in this recording. And I pretty much can cover both of these in that time. I mean, it may even be too much time. It's really surprising how little happens, all things considered. So Sanji is just, remains enraged at the fact that he thought he was somewhere full of pretty women, and it turns out that they are either trans women or simply men who enjoy cross-dressing. It's not really made totally clear. I think they're supposed to be trans women, but I don't know, like, exactly. So either way, he thought he was going to be getting something that he wound up not getting, and is so sulky. I mean, so petulant about it. Now, granted, they keep trying to make him do the feminine thing. And it's sort of funny because a part of me, it wants to disapprove, right? Of the fact that this dude wants no part of this, and they are not respecting that and backing off. A part of me is just sort of like, why can't we just... I can't help but think about the people who are not cis, who have been forced to pretend to be cis. So I have less and less sympathy for Sanji, because he's just experiencing what a lot of people have been forced to live through their entire lives. It's like the vibe is off, but also a big part of me just can't care enough. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, he gets brought to Caroline, who is like the interim queen of I can't remember the name of this island. And you guys, I really, really love her look. I feel like I mentioned this last time I saw her, but she looks so much like the woman who plays Audrey on Ellen. Talk about a blast from the past. The show Ellen is not a show that I ever really reference in any sense, because it's so irrelevant. But Audrey just had a look to her that this character has, and it is really funny to me how similar that I almost wonder if it's purposeful. I'm like, did Oda remember her and base her off of that character specifically? I don't know. But anyway, the whole thing is Sanji arguing about how he doesn't want any part of this. He just wants to get off this island. And Caroline is like, I will let you off as long as you are able to beat our strongest fighter. Which, of course, unsurprisingly, turns out to be her. And, of course, Sanji agrees. And she's like, well, you have to put on our uniform in order to fight. And he agrees. Well, shocker, it's a dress and it's makeup. The eyeshadow looks quite fetching. The dress does nothing for him. This is not doing him any favors. There is a way that this could have been made to work, and it doesn't. His nails are painted, and he's wearing high heels, by the way. He's got a whole thing going on. So he comes out. Everybody's saying how cute he looks, and he's like, shut up, I do not. I've had more of this than I can take. And then finally out comes Caroline. And Caroline has that ability of like sort of sneaking up on you with, I can't remember what it's called. If it's, I keep wanting to say shave. It is shave, right? I don't know if that's exactly the move that she's doing, but it's the next best thing. He doesn't know she's there and she's suddenly in front of him. And she is able to send him sprawling at just a touch under the chin at one point. The look that she's got, you guys, I love this whole outfit. She's got like the headband, a sort of 60s like side swept bang with the headband matches a pair of cat's eye glasses and this like ruffly dress. She's got knee socks on. Like, it's a fucking killer look. If I were going to do a cosplay, I'd probably pick this. It's just so cute. I would wear this. And he goes in with like a hard kick. Of course, when he removes his foot and waits for the dust to clear, she's not fucking there. Eventually, there comes this point where she's like, he gets real, what's the word? Self-conscious about the fact that it looks like she is sneaking peeks up his dress. And it's so funny because he's like, why should I care about that? I'm a guy. And I'm like, well, why should a woman care about that? And it's just because we're supposed to be more modest than men are. Like, there's nothing more to be seen with women's underwear than men's underwear. If anything, there's less. But men are the ones that are supposed to not be embarrassed while we are. It's weird. But yeah, she says, well, you are using your masculinity to like hide your true feelings. You aren't living as who you really are. So you should be free and awaken your inner maiden. And even though Sanji is like trying to fight back, it's like something in him has cracked. And he's just like, no, actually, hold on. And it's weird because the reaction is like paired with him being paralyzed with embarrassment. As if that's proof that he is now fully a maiden. Just really weird requirements for womanhood in this. It's strange, truly. But we have the whole metaphor of like a flower blooming and everything, you guys. It is really wild. And the next thing we see is him like gallivanting around on the beach wearing a dress and heels and just like embracing being super femme. And it's like he's writing a letter to Nami and to Robin. I don't know how he's sending this. I don't know how any of this is working. Also, his hair has apparently grown, or he's just been given really weird extensions. I love that he's got the lipstick and everything, but he's still got his cigarette. Chopper's thing, I'm just going to do this really quick, you guys. Chopper's caring for an infant bird that fell. You think that this is going to matter to the other birds that he rescued this infant? It doesn't. And he's still being hunted by the wild savages who are speaking in terrible, like, Native American stereotypical language to be eaten. And that's it. That's like all that happens. It's just really tiresome. Chopper's arc is the most boring by far. I haven't seen anybody else yet. That's all we got, so I may change my assessment. But as of right now, I don't know what we're doing here, but all he is having happen is like being thrown off cliffs and stuff. And I love Chopper, and I don't like seeing him treated like this, so I'm very eager for this part to end. So, all right, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys again for listening. Hope y'all are enjoying the coverage. Thank you, Florian, for commissioning. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.